I'd like to next recognize via WebEx Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Chair Rosen, and thank you as well to Senator Scott. And I'm really excited to hear from our witnesses today. I know this has been such a tough time for tourism, but having this hearing couldn't be more timely. I have long been involved in this issue from the time that I had the job of chairing the Tourism Subcommittee in Commerce. Proud of the work that we've done together with some of the witnesses on Brand USA and the work that you're doing today. And I guess I'd start there because I know that Senator Rosen asked a question and talked about the loss, at least, of international travel on the MGM resorts and also really everywhere in the country, which is part of the reason we were so proud of the work we've done on Brand USA, which finally allowed us to have an even playing field when it came to promoting our own country. This has been a real gut punch for the tourism industry. Obviously, we had to shut down the borders for international tourists. But as we see this, as we call it on Lake Superior, the lighthouse on the horizon, as opposed to the light at the end of the tunnel, with the vaccine and what's happening. Ms. Barnes, in your testimony, you highlight that if international travel is not reopened soon, a total of 1.1 million American jobs and 262 billion in spending will be lost by the end of 2021, and that temporary emergency funding for Brand USA is needed. Can you talk about what resources you think are needed?
Sure. Thank you, Senator, for your question and for your tremendous leadership as the chair of the Travel and Tourism Caucus in the Senate. We are very grateful for your leadership, in particular, as we sought to reauthorize Brand USA back in late 2019, which feels like a decade ago.
Except you must admit we were smart to do it early. We got it done a year early, thanks to Senator Blunt and other things. So,
yes, grateful to both of you. Thank you. So as I noted, international travel has declined by 76%, and right now we're looking at a 5-year time horizon for recovery. But we know that we can shorten that timeline, and just in the losses for 2021, if we are able to reopen international travel by July, that can stem 40% of the expected losses this year. So we really need Brand USA that is currently having a funding challenge because of the lack of international travel. Usually the ESTA fee is coming in a robust fashion and capped at 100 million, which goes to Brand USA. But because that money isn't coming in, because the international borders are closed, we really need an emergency funding mechanism. What we think is about $250 million in an appropriation, usually the 100 million that comes in on international fees is matched by the private sector. But unfortunately, due to the decimation of the private sector right now, those matching funds are unlikely to be captured. So again, if the Appropriations Committee could put forward 250 million, we think they'll be able to do their work to bring back international travelers and make sure that that 26-to-1 return on investment is provided. And I'll just note, since we were talking about exports, that in 2019, the tourism industry provided a $59 billion export for the country. So it really is important beyond just domestic funding.
Very good. And then another bill that Senator Blunt and I have introduced, the Protecting Tourism in the United States Act, directs the Commerce Department in consultation with the U.S. Travel and Tourism Board and key federal agencies to develop a plan to help the tourism industry recover, simply because, I think that as things are getting a little better, their ramp up is going to be slower by virtue of the nature of the customers here and where they come from and how they can travel than other industries. And I guess I'll turn to you with this, Mr. Perez. And by the way, I also want to mention the great leadership of Chair Rosen as well as Senator Cortez Masto on these issues with Nevada. But one report found that in 2020, more than 670,000 hotel industry jobs And in your testimony, you note that MGM Resorts had to furlough 60,000 employees as a result of the pandemic. Can you speak to how long the hotel industry can sustain itself on the current federal economic relief, particularly regarding your workforce?
Thank you very much, Senator, for the question. Look, the employees are coming back, not only in Las Vegas, but also for our regional properties. But they're doing so when the customers have started to come back. What we've seen clearly as vaccinations, shots in arms are becoming more and more pervasive, things have turned around relatively quickly. The question for us is how sustainable is that? Because it happened as, we were leaving the winter, if you will, entering better weather, and along with the stimulus. So there's a little bit of noise, but the way this is, and I apologize. I apologize. Can you repeat the question for a second? I'm sorry.
Well, no, it was just, it's okay, because I'm probably out of time, and my colleagues are probably glad that you forgot the question. No, it was just mostly about how long the hotel industry can sustain itself.
Yeah. So, and what I'll say, and I'll just end it really quickly. And it right now it is a bit of a challenge particularly in Las Vegas and a few of our other regional properties, to find labor for the reasons mentioned earlier. And as our customers return, we feel that with time we can get our employees back and do this in the right form and right fashion. So, but it's a process. It's a process.
Exactly. Very good. And we hope you're working as well with Carlson Companies in Minnesota. We're proud of the work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
He's in.
Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Braun, no. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Heinrich, aye. Mr. McConnell, no. Ms. Hassan, aye. Mr. Rono, aye. Mr. King, aye. Mr. Manchin, aye. Mr. Janes, no.
Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mrs. Feinstein, Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Schillebrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Manchin, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Portman, Mr. Reed, Mr. Risch, Mr. Romney, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Sass, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Sinema, Ms. Smith, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden,